Franklin County 1130 Visitor Center. I'm Janet Pollard. I lead the team here. Back there we have our Tourism Associates CTA Directors Lauren Formosa and Evan Kreider, and today they're going to be doing the pouring. And I saw Patricia Bunn wandering around here, Lisa McCracken, Wendy Arispa. We're all the Franklin County Visitors Bureau team. Mary Harris works with us as a contractor doing bus tours. So, you know, we're just friends and family having a good time, which is a great way to talk about beer. So National Beer Day. Hey, how comes it's April 7th? April 7th actually was the day that the law, which FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, repealed in 1933, that allowed there to be beer that was like 3.2 beer, they called it. It's about a 4% beer today. So it repealed that from what had happened during World War I. There was a prohibition on the amount of alcohol, followed by actual prohibition. So we're kind of celebrating the ability to pick up the glass and go cheers. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the past Franklin County brewing and the present. So one of the things that is really interesting about beer, it's such a connection to our agriculture. It's such a connection to our early American history. And we really have a lot of brewing. Hello, Arnie, pick a seat anywhere. We really have a lot of connection to beer in an agricultural area because of what was grown here. And Benjamin Chambers, who was the founder of Chambersburg, but he was also an Irish immigrant from the county of Antrim in Ireland. And he and his brothers emigrated into Pennsylvania, into the Philadelphia port, and they actually settled first at Fort Hunter, which is right near Harrisburg. It's along Fishing Creek, Harris Ferry. And so he was a millwright. He and his brothers operated a mill, a sawmill, and they even had a tavern. And that kind of all goes together because it's all about that water power. And water power is what fueled not just our granaries, but also really development of communities, because no farmer really wanted to go more than 10 or 12 miles away in order to get his grain milled, because that meant he'd be out of the field for that whole day, and it wasn't really conducive to what he needed to do with his time. So you're going to find out that mills were one of the things that they built early. Mills and sawmills were both water powered. So they came beside each other oftentimes. And then of course Franklin County, they emigrated down into, they went west, the Susquehanna into this area here in the 1730s. It was the Conococheague settlement. So everything west of the Susquehanna was the Conococheague settlement. And Benjamin Chambers was one of the first to settle here. And he brought his knowledge of milling. Now one of the things that I just want to show, I have some freebie copies of this. It's all about the old mills of Franklin County, and it was written by Dan Guzzi, and it's his 3rd edition. So what's cool about this is he did all this research on these mills, so he had this subset of information about breweries, and about granaries and about breweries. So you can pick one of these up later, and a lot of the research from today's talk came from Dan Guzzi, and he'd be here doing it for you today, but Dan's taking care of his wife. And we're just going to hope that he keeps researching and sharing all this information with us. But I want to just backtrack 1 minute about the millwrights, because the millwrights aren't the millers. The millwrights were the ones who knew how to build the mills. So you actually had to understand how am I going to create the stones that are going to grind this? How am I going to find a water body that gives me the correct drop in order to power those the wheels on the big stones that grind the grain? They had to survey land. They had to be an architect. They had to be a blacksmith. they had to have a vast understanding of how all these different pieces work together to be able to build a mill. Now, why beer? I mean, why are we talking, why beer in colonial times? One of the big reasons that alcohol, hi, come on in, grab a seat. This is going to be the littlest attendee. This is Roman Formosa. Hi, Mommy and Daddy. He is a certified tourism ambassador in training. And I'm probably a future beer drinker too. But one of the cool things about the alcohol in the beer, even that little bit of alcohol, was a pathogenenic, so it would kill the bacteria. And that's why you're finding people of all genders and all ages would be drinking beer. And it could be made based on what could be grown here, what was already growing here. They didn't have to import anything from England, so it was colonial friendly. And in Pennsylvania, which is the home to Philadelphia, this came to be a big beer making community. In 1862, William Penn recorded the progress of beer making in the city and the colony. And he described a PA beer made with molasses, sassafras, and pine. And as Philadelphia grew, so did beer making and malt industries. And it was great because they're right there on the water. They shipped it to the southern colonies, and it also was shipped as far away as Barbados. So that's great today because breweries in Pennsylvania, who was a tremendous help with our new core trail by getting a press release out, they love all that history. They love that we were a leader in the beer industry then, because Pennsylvania is once again a leader in the beer industry. Now in Franklin County specifically, during these colonial times, home brewing created what we call small beers. Has anybody ever heard of a small beer? It's a beer that the kids would drink, and it had a lower alcohol content. And sometimes when they're making like the beer, they would just run a couple more batches through, so every time the alcohol is lower and lower. And this did not have enough alcohol in it that it wouldn't start to go bad. So they had to use it up in a couple days. And so they're making multiple batches, 2-3 batches a week. So it's actually, we say farm to table. Well, in colonial times, this was garden to table. And there's a publication called The Spatula, and it's an illustrated magazine for pharmacists. And a 1920 version had this home brewing little poem or jingle. If barley be wanting to make into malt, we must be content and think it no fault. For we can make liquor to sweeten our lips of pumpkins and parsnips and walnut tree chips, which I thought put really in perspective what they were doing. They were doing garden to table. Commercial breweries in Franklin County, these really didn't hit their stride until we get into the early 1800s. One of the earliest commercial brewers was George Barnett's. Now this is where his brewery was. And if you look, we didn't give those out, did we? Hey, Evan and Lauren, could you please hand out that burning map?
Yes.
Thank you, because this might help you understand what I'm going to read to you. And I'll just skip ahead to give some of you a chance to get this. The mercantile tax records are what were used to be able to know where there were breweries. So it's from those tax records from the middle of the 1800s until the end of the 1800s that this information came from. And Chambersburg was the center, it was the population center of Franklin County, and so it was the commercial brewing center of Franklin County. But there were also breweries in Mercersburg, one owned by Isaac Taylor, and one in Waynesboro owned by George Foreman. And we know about those breweries because of advertisements that were placed in the papers to sell the properties. Now those maps that I handed out, so I'm going to just read the description of where George Barnett's brewery was. And this brewery was subsequently owned in the future by Jeremiah Talbot and Christopher Gurn Talbot, and then after that, David Washabaugh and George and Charles Ludwig. They owned this same brewery. So the description of where it is, it's along, it is on the east side of the Connicajig Creek, along the southeast corner of the creek with the intersection of an alley that ran parallel and between Market Street, which is today's Lincoln Way, and Queen Street. So you're thinking, you know, this is, we no longer have things the same today, but it's very interesting to imagine where those breweries were located, because they had to be by the water in order to run those grinding wheels.
Janet?
Yes.
Based off the description you just gave, I think that might be Shoppers parking lot.
Well, now we're getting to that too, okay?
Sorry, no.
So here, that's okay, because there's a picture of what's under Shoppers parking lot, at least what I've been told. This is a map of Barnett's Brewery, okay? So you can take a look at that map. This map, the streets are configured differently here. We would have called this Burkhardt Alley at one point, I believe, or also Gas Alley. But when the Shoppers lot was paved, this is an old image of Ludwig's Brewery. And all throughout this area, even behind Central, behind this building, and behind the Shoppers lot are a lot of underground caverns. And I did a book with Mike Moreau about Chambersburg, old images of Chambersburg through Arcadia Publishing. And we have a really good picture of this in that book. And it's amazing to think whenever you park your car that there are these arches. So I mean, we're not just talking about beer here. We're talking about life and economy and how we all got to be, you know, living where we live. So let's now get ready here, grab some lunch and taste, and then plan a tour of breweries, wineries, and distilleries. We have the map that's right there on the table. We included some upcoming events. We also have the hours. We're going to be having a passport. We're about a week out from having the passport. For every dollar you spend, it's going to count as a point. So no matter where you spend it, save your receipts, and then you can turn it into us, and you can get prizes like t-shirts, you can get hats, you can get pint glasses. We'll be having some stickers and some envelopes. So if you have anything that you look for when you're out beer touring, let us know, and we'll add that to our prize list. One last thing, we're going to be doing this year, last year we did 300 years of flavor, Franklin County food. We did it in April. We're going to be doing it this year in August, and we're looking to precede it with a bus tour that visits some of our breweries, wineries, and distilleries, and then you can come here for a very nice Franklin County food experience. So, that's it. Hey, go at it, enjoy lunch, and then grab some tastings. We have a table full of tastings.